Greg Olsen, what are you doing, my guy? Greg Olsen is hurting the Panthers by saying he'd take a call about the Panthers head coaching job. Greg Olsen is hurting whoever actually becomes the Panthers' next head coach by going on this little campaign of saying, I'll take the job, I'll take the call. Here's Greg Olsen on The Rich Eisen Show.
This is a city that I love. This is a team that I played the bulk of my career for. I want to see them have success. I live here. My kids are here. We want to see the Carolina Panthers return to, the level that we were able to have a good 5-6 year run where we were one of the more relevant, one of the better stories in the NFL year in and year out playing in the playoffs. Like, of course I want that for them. I love Chris Tabor, the interim coach there. Me and Chris go all the way back to Chicago. He was a young special teams coach when I was in Chicago. We've had a good friendship all the way through these years before, obviously before joining Carolina these last couple of seasons. So I want them to do well. So I would be crazy if they said, hey, listen, is this something you talk to us about? To entertain and take that conversation, I think that's fairly obvious, right? This is a game that I've loved. This is a game that I've been involved in now my entire life. And at the NFL level, almost 20 years.
I wish you all could have heard me on the radio where I was somewhere else when I was talking about Jeff Saturday taking over for the Indianapolis Colts, because it was nothing against Jeff Saturday. It was just the fact that I knew it would go terribly, and it did. And this is a very similar situation. It is nothing against Greg Olsen, but it would go terribly. And they're not even talking about an interim coaching deal here. They talk about the real coaching deal here. But here's where it ends up hurting the Panthers. Fans, heck, humans, right? People will always fall for nostalgia. It's just part of our DNA, right?
The emotional attachment.
The music was better when you were kids. The movies was better when you were kids. No, the high schoolers, they don't have it as good as you had it.
Back in my day.
Oh, we didn't have cell phones. We just had to say, meet you somewhere at 7 and hope they showed up, as if that's a better way to go about things. But nostalgia says it is, because it was a good part of your life. Nostalgia is really difficult to compete with. Whoever the Panthers hire, which will not be Greg Olsen, just won't be. You don't want fans being mad at that person or starting them, say, with one strike against their support, right? Like, hey, one strike, 2 more and you're out. Against the fan support simply because they're not a Panthers legend. I've in my life, in my professional career, I've covered a bunch of coaching searches, right? I covered the Virginia Tech coaching search that ended very in depth. I covered it that ended with Brent Pry as their coach, and the same thing happened there. That's happening in Carolina right now. There's a whole bunch of viral tweets that everybody's liking that says the quarterback's coach should be Cam Newton. The running backs coach should be Jonathan Stewart. The tight ends coach should be Greg Olsen. The wide receivers coach should be Steve Smith Sr. And you put together this entire list. For Virginia Tech, it was like quarterbacks, Michael Vick, like all the way. Defensive line should be Bruce Smith, and all the way on and on and on down the list. And I'm just sitting there going, first of all, that wouldn't work. You wouldn't have any coaches on the team. You would just have a bunch of former players. Second of all, you're setting up whoever takes those jobs to be disappointed just because they don't have the nostalgia love factor that you have for these players. Greg Olsen is a great guy, by all accounts. Does a ton for charity in North Carolina, which, special place in all of our hearts. I think he's a really good broadcaster. I think he is underrated as a color guy, and I kind of hope Tom Brady chooses not to go to Fox, because then we keep getting Burkhardt and Olsen as the number one group on Fox. I'm an Olsen fan. The Olsen twins, Greg Olsen, all of them. Are the Olsen twins still doing anything? I don't even know. Whoever the Panthers hire needs the support of the fans. Did you see how quickly everybody turned on Frank Reich? And he didn't come in with disappointment out the gate. New coaches need support, right? That builds patience. If the public isn't running around with metaphorical pitchforks saying, I need that guy out of town, then it makes it easier for the owner or the GM or whoever's the hirer or firer in that situation to have the patience that a coach needs to get their feet under them and get their culture built and get the winning started.
But unfortunately, Tim, you want to know when the fans did support the Panthers head coach, when there was a little bit of nostalgia there? When Steve Wilkes was the interim head coach. But guess what? That didn't work out.
You actually could argue that very situation started off Frank Reich's tenure on the wrong foot.
I agree with you on that.
That may have been the first strike against Frank Reich, was just that he's not Steve Wilkes. Because Steve Wilkes was a Carolina guy that cared about Carolina and wanted to be in Carolina. And, oh, by the way, he won 6 games. So that's not Frank Reich's fault. Frank Reich did a lot that was his fault. It was not Frank Reich's fault that they chose him over Steve Wilkes. Just like whoever ends up being the next coach, it's not going to be their fault that they're not Greg Olsen. That's tough.